The Master Keys series of mechanical keyboards from Cooler Master features genuine Cherry MX switches and the flexibility of choice. Whether you want small, medium, or large, you can pick your size and pick your color with RGB and clear white LED backlighting options. Click the sponsor link in the description for more information.
Excellent! What's up guys, welcome back to Paul's Hardware. Today's video is going to be about me taking apart, cleaning out, and doing some tender love and care on Arctic Panther, the epic water-cooled system that I built back in 2015. I actually finished this system in July of that year, and there's an Arctic Panther playlist with the entire build process because it took me many months, and I'll link that down in the video's description. But for today, I wanted to, of course, clean this thing out because it really needs it. But I also wanted to answer you guys' questions because quite a few people have been asking me, where has Arctic Panther been? And it's not like it's disappeared or not been being used or anything like that. I've been getting a ton of use out of the system. So let's start off with a quick explanation of that. So back in the corner over there is where I usually have a system that's usually pretty evident when I'm sitting here at my desk and talking to you guys on camera and stuff like that. Right now, although it is turned off, that is my epic RGB system back there, and I also had that $3,500 builds back there for a while as well. The reason that I moved Arctic Panther from that position and back to my computer room is because I actually tend to play video games out here more frequently. That's connected to the Acer Predator X34 monitor, and it's just a better gaming situation. And Arctic Panther has dual GTX 980s, which are definitely a little bit long in the tooth at this point. When I set this up with GTX 980s, the GTX 980 was the fastest single GPU card that was available, so that's why I went with it. Although by the time I finished Arctic Panther, the 980 Ti had come out, so more's the pity, but that's just kind of what happens when you build computers. Newer stuff comes out. So I moved Arctic Panther back to the computer room where I would actually use it for what it is much better suited for, which is editing video, and I've been using that to edit pretty much all of the Paul's Hardware videos that you've seen, or at least do final renders with. If my editor Joe happens to edit, I still load them up on this system and do a final pass through before I render them out, and it's been doing a great job for that. But recently it's been getting louder, hotter, and there's definitely some flow issues. Also, I will fully admit that I've neglected to clean this as frequently as I should have. Real quick, let's run over the parts if you're not familiar. The case is a Fractal Design R5, and I did do a custom modification on the side panel here. I cut this out with my saw, and I replaced it with an actual tempered glass piece here. I used some adhesive strips to hold that on, as well as some equipment from MNPC Tech that they sent over, such as the channel routing that goes around the outside, which gave it a much cleaner finish right around the edge there, and also helps clean up my sort of rough edges from my hack job of sawing all of that. But anyway, internally we have a 5960X, which was originally overclocked to about 4.7 gigahertz. Dialed it back to a 4.5 gigahertz for a 24/7 overclock. I've actually since then dialed it back to 4.1, and that's mainly because I was seeing temperatures start to rise. But since I was using this system for like regular production, I couldn't go without it. I mean, I was just too reliant upon it to actually load everything up, and since it's got so much storage and everything, like my entire channel was pretty much loaded on this, backed up externally of course as well. But the transition of either fixing this up or getting that stuff transferred somewhere else was definitely going to be a challenge. Motherboard though is Asus X99 Deluxe. I have 32 gigs of G.Skill, I believe that's Ripjaws memory in there, I forget which line that might be. A couple Gigabyte GTX 980s with EK blocks on them. Full, pretty much almost all EK parts in here as far as the blocks, Supremacy EVO, as well as the GPU blocks here, as well as the pump res combo. And then I do have some bits power fittings and some other random fittings in there. PETG hardline tubing, the Fractal Design Newton 1000 watt power supply, which I spent that's probably the most time consuming part of this build, was custom sleeving that power supply, which was, oh my gosh, it was a challenge. Tons of Fractal Venturi fans in here, not just for the radiator. We have 3 in the radiator at the top, a couple more on the front intake radiator, and then another intake just down here at the bottom to push some more fresh air up into the system. For storage, I have 4 SSDs and 2 hard drives. The 2 hard drives are WD Blacks, 4 terabyte drives. Those are in RAID 1, so they duplicate each other. So whenever I copy footage, it goes on this, which copies it immediately to 2 drives, so I have an immediate backup. I have a Samsung 850 EVO 256 gig SSD for the operating system. I also have 2 more Samsung, I believe they're 850 Pros, 512 gigs that are back behind the motherboard tray. Those are in RAID 0, and those are really fast editing array. And then finally down here at the bottom I have tucked in the Intel SSD 750 series, which is a 1.2 terabyte SSD, and that is my fastest SSD. I've actually been considering moving the operating system onto that, but I have not gotten around to it, but perhaps soon. So that's pretty much all the parts that are in here, I believe. Let's start off with let's just go right for it and see how terrible the dust situation is on the bottom. Okay, alright, that's not good. That's not terrible. I've seen worse. But you can definitely see where most of the air intake is coming in on the front, at least. Those two circular dust indentations, or whatever you want to call them. And then we also have a... oh my poor power supply. Actually, no, that would not be the... no, that's the 120 intake right there. Also doing its job nicely. And the power supply, probably the power supply fan doesn't have to run all that fast most of the time, because the power supply fan is, you know, it's able to stay pretty mellow with this 1000 watt power supply and still provide enough juice for the system. So apart from dust buildup, we also have this my fluid. It's white fluid. It was actually a early like beta version of Primo Chill's white additive for their fluid, but it's been working just fine for me. However, it has apparently started to break down some and probably is causing some clogging in some of my blocks, my GPU blocks as well as my CPU block, because this would be the outlet from the CPU, which goes over into the final radiator and then back into the pump reservoir, and this one has like barely even been filling out. It's like a trickle of fluid that finally comes out here at the end of the loop, which I know is not providing me adequate cooling because, well, I run temperature monitors and my temps have been up in the, well, when I'm rendering at least, they're getting into the 90s, and that's bad, especially for a liquid cooled system like this. So my MO for the rest of the day today is going to be to disassemble most of the loop. I'm going to try to leave a lot of the core base components where they are. I'm also going to try to leave the radiators in. I do have some other water cooling equipment that I'm going to use to connect up with some external buckets so I can flush parts of the system using the pump, because that's another thing I don't really have, is an additional water cooling pump to use externally to cycle stuff through. The main goal is to flush out my blocks, of course, and get those cleaned out. Try to clean out the radiators some if possible. I don't think stuff usually gets as clogged up in the rads, but I would at least like to flush through for a cycle. I'm probably going to replace that fluid with just standard distilled water, and I got a few containers of that there. This is actually the original white fluid, so it was just distilled water with that Primo Chill additive, and I've just been saving this. So I could theoretically replace the white fluid, but I kind of want to go for more of a utilitarian setup for this, at least for right now. And then I'm going to ask you guys some questions towards the end of the video as far as what you think I should do, whether you think I'm going to get it to a point today that's just okay and I can go on using it like that, or if you guys would be interested in seeing me kind of attack this system one more time, maybe do some upgrades, maybe like graphics card upgrade or something like that. I have options. There's things I could do. But for now, here's some footage of hopefully me getting a ton of work done, starting with the draining process.
Alright guys, it's the next morning and probably a good time for a bit of a progress update and maybe some explanations. So as you can see, I have pretty much removed most of the loop at this point except for the radiators, and the radiators I'm leaving in for now. More on that in just a second though. This has allowed me to get in there and do a good deal of more of cleaning, which was kind of nice. But I wasn't really potentially planning on removing all of this stuff because the first thing I was hoping I could do is set up some manual control for the pump and just get some water flowing through there so I could, you know, break up anything that might have been causing blockage. And I was doing that with an external power supply, which I was using to power the pump, and a little fan controller. Unfortunately, that didn't really work. Things were still pretty clogged. And so I set to pulling everything apart. Now, since I was really intending for this to be like a one-day job because I kind of need to get the system back up and running, I've made some decisions and cut some corners, and also I've been stupid a little bit. So you might have seen the incredible amount of residue that had built up on this CPU block, and as well as on just some of the edges of some of the connections and that kind of thing. And that was a result of the fluid additive that I used to make it opaque white fluid that looked kind of like milk, as a lot of people originally pointed out. And that stuff actually came from Primo Chill via J, and it was like a beta fluid. I mean, it was not like something that they were selling. It was like a prototype. So I have always watched the temperatures on Arctic Panther, and it's only just recently that they've started to climb up. And I'll fully admit that I totally should have flushed this system far prior to now, but anyway, we have what we have going on, and that is a block that I've had to clean, which I cleaned totally improperly. I checked the EK actual website on their recommendations for cleaning a nickel-plated CPU block like this, and I definitely didn't do it right. They recommend something really mild like diluted lemon juice, which Brian, BPS Customs on Twitter, also recommended. Due to the amount of buildup that was on this, which was honestly significant, and I don't think I could have cut through it any other way, I hit it with rubbing alcohol, like isopropyl, I think 91%, which you're not supposed to do. So don't do that. But it did clean it out pretty good. I do have a little bit of I don't know, like some residue and stuff on there on the nickel plating that won't really come off, and that center channel does look pretty questionable, just that very middle point right there, and that's where the water actually gets blasted down through this little plate. The plate fortunately cleaned up pretty well. So anyway, I'm going to be reusing this, and I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on temperatures. And, you know, worst comes to worst, I will pull it apart again and replace that CPU block. But also, I did not take apart the GPU assembly, again, primarily due to time. But what I did last night, as I was also cleaning out all these tubes, which I did by just winding up some paper towel and pushing it through them, which was oh so much fun. But basically, I was rinsing everything off with the tap water and then finishing it off with a rinse with the distilled water. As for the GPU assembly, I was just drizzling water through there from the tap, and it was coming out the other side, so I don't think the GPU blocks are as clogged as the CPU block was. So I solved that by filling this multiple times, and then just kind of blowing it out the other side, and I got some of the stuff out there. I don't think that's really a recommended technique either, so you know, I'm just telling you guys because I feel like I should admit it to someone. But anyway, then again, went through with the distilled water, rinsed it out again multiple times, and I think these are going to be doing okay as well. That's also part of the reason why this became a 2-day thing, was because I wanted to make sure everything dried off pretty well, because I did get some water like on the GPU power connectors. So all that being said, today I will be taking my pump, getting some distilled water, flushing the radiators with that multiple times, and then putting everything back together, hopefully filling the loop, and then getting everything finished before I have to go over and do the live show with Kyle. Alright, let's go.
And there she is. The Arctic Panther is refilled, and this video has not been without its fair share of me just screwing up big time. So I don't know if you could tell during that filling process, but I have my suspended funnel up there on top that I'm using to fill the reservoir right there. I did remove my drain off the back. I felt like I wasn't getting much use out of it, so I took that off. So as a result, I had the cap on this loose so the air could get in as I was cycling the water through. And then of course I overfilled it and the water drained out and went everywhere, and that was loads of fun. But so as a result, this video is not going to be like as finished as I was kind of hoping it would. I was hoping to be like, look, the system's booted back up and everything's fine. But a decent amount of water drained back there, and I really want to let the pump run for at least a few hours, probably overnight, to make sure that I don't have any leaks. And fortunately, I don't have any leaks on these reconnected tubes at all so far. And then also that will allow any water that might have tripped down here to evaporate. I did sop as much of it up as I could with paper towels. Honestly, it wasn't that much, but when it's inside a computer, it seems like a lot. So yeah, good news though, again, is that all my tubing went back in place without any problems or with minimal problems. Again, no leaks coming from any of these seals as far as I can tell so far. Pump is cycling, everything's working as it was. And if you hadn't noticed as well, I went with just clear distilled water for now, although it is still picking up just a little bit of cloudiness from stuff that might have still been left in the loop, since I did as thorough a job as I could without completely taking everything apart. So there it is. Arctic Panther has been restored, and hopefully when I actually boot it back up, everything is still working and in place as it was, since I have some RAID array configurations going on and that kind of thing. But guys, I think the debate that should probably rage in the comments section is going to be, is something like this worth it? Especially if you're someone like me who very much relies on their main computer for production and that kind of thing. Do you think that this water cooling situation is worth it? And then beyond just water cooling with the aesthetics in mind, because that's definitely what caused at least some issues here, is the fact that my the coolant in there was opaque and eventually clogged things up. So feel free to rage in the comments about that. What do you think is better? Should I just go with air cooled all the way? Oh, and then also let me know if I should come back to this in the future. I could swap in the 6950X, I could add 1080 Ti's, or I could just save all that and do a completely different build. Anyway guys, thanks for watching this video. Hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching Paul's Hardware.